usually I would go into review, and I can go ahead and do that this time. I mean, it's not going to be... I don't think we're going to take as long for this review, because there's not too much to talk about, actually. I mean, like, the game core loop is pretty obvious. But anyway, so, after every playthrough, I usually go... This is probably the part of the game that the part of the playthrough that I usually talk about. Oh, before we do that, though, I should show you, like, they had other things. Did they have a White Sister? Yeah, that's the new, costume that you get. Because I think because I did SD's, side quests. Anyway, this is the real end of the playthrough, and we're gonna go ahead and go into the review. So I usually review the game after to give you my thoughts about how I felt about it. So with this game, let's see, I guess we'll do the same thing as we normally do. Normally I do into 4 categories: story, graphics, sound, and I'm also going to lower the volume so it's much easier for you to hear me, but just a little bit, since the game is not that loud. And you get some nice pleasant singing too. Anyway, so this is I'll put it in load so that way it won't go into the demo loop, which it will go into the animated cutscene. So story, graphics, sound, and gameplay. So we'll go ahead and go with story first. And I mean, honestly, this game is actually, like, outside of its game. Okay, without talking about how the game plays, like, the story is like it's just heartwarming, right? I mean, there's no epic story of like saving the world or anything like that. Like, there's not even a final boss, actually. You can do things that are much harder, but you don't have to. In fact, it doesn't even seem like it impacts the ending whether or not you do it, because you can totally beat the game without fighting the super bosses, as you saw, and you can get a pretty decent ending too. Let me think. What am I gonna say again? So, a lot of the game is like, the story it's very simple. It's basically you're just trying to get through the 3 years and to save your workshop, and that's awesome. I mean, that's the simple, like, that's literally the plot. There's not much to it. So, like, there's some twists and turns where they try to, like, stop you from trying to get in your way, but if you can overcome them, you'll definitely be able to succeed. But what more importantly is just, like, it's also the interaction with the characters, and, like, you get to know them, and, like, they get to do really funny things, and, like, the dialogue is very heartwarming. It's like very I know, it's like, this game is very wholesome. I don't know, I guess that's the best way to put it. Just like there's not been, like, okay, outside of like one time with like a swimsuit, and even then that was actually kind of connected to you have to be opening up a new area, so it's not completely like removed from what the story's about. And I had like that, like, for the most part, like, it's all like, yeah, it's very wholesome. Like, there's some, like, it never goes too far. It's never too, I mean, like, it's never too depressing. I mean, of course, like, there's lows and highs, and of course, it's like a valid thing to be like really worried about whether or not you're a good enough alchemist, and like just trying to have Rorona build her confidence as well. But yeah, it's just a really nice story to. It's a nice simple story, and it's like more about the character interactions, and those are really fun. And like, I think the game is also pretty self-aware too, surprisingly. So sometimes I'm actually like, oh, I'm commenting on the situation, and then like the character would just say the exact same thing. I'm like, yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I was thinking too, and I actually appreciated that a lot. So the writing is actually quite self-aware, and like, and that's great. So they actually managed to make it. I mean, like, this is like Atelier's like forte is just making cute scenarios and like cute interactions, but also it's not just fluff. It's also like there's always something behind it. I really do like it a lot. And I know, like, for a lot of people, like, you're coming into a lot of RPGs expecting some grandiose plot or like some like crazy schemes. But I actually appreciate that the game is so localized to where it is, and it literally is just about the workshop and the process of getting that workshop up. And there's no like sinister like, oh, this was something that happened 1,000 years ago and finally it's come, that kind of thing where like we made the plot grandiose. And I kind of like, yeah, it's kind of nice. It's kind of a nice change from like all these other RPGs that's all about saving the world or saving the nation or empire or whatever, kingdom or whatever you want to say. And so it will be interesting to see what the later games take place in. I know they take place in different areas. Well, Arlen Trilogy, they should be taking place around a similar vicinity, but I don't know yet because I've not played Totori or... I'm sorry, using Japanese. Totori, Meruru, or Totori, or Meru. It will be interesting to see how those will change or how those stories will be, because those two characters are going to be quite different. I won't say exactly about why, because we'll do it when we play their game. So it's most likely we'll play another game from this series someday. I know, if it feels like this game is like taking the place, replacing like the Illusion of Gaia Terranigma at this point. But anyway, it actually takes quite a while too. But anyway, so that's pretty much it for the story. So very fun, very wholesome, and like, yeah, and actually not all that much like, despite what you would think from the game and like how the DLC is directed, like the game is actually not. There's not a whole lot of fan service. Actually, yeah, there was like one moment. That was it. The rest were all actually pretty like, yeah. I would think it's actually pretty like, I mean, like, I don't know if it's kid appropriate, but like it's nothing. There's no teeth. Don't worry. There's not a lot of like sexual situations. Like, it's actually like, yeah, it's pretty wholesome, as I said. So I'm actually really impressed. I'm impressed. I'm like, I thought I was like, oh, is this gonna go crazy? Like, oh no, they don't actually go the fan service angle. I'm like pretty impressed. So good job, Gust. So that means I go to graphics. So the thing is, like, for a game, like, I guess it depends on what you're thinking, how we should think about the graphics, cause for 2019 and 18, or sorry, 2018 when it came out, honestly, like, it's pretty dated. It's not the greatest graphics I've seen. And that's probably because the actual game was made in 2000. Like, the original version is like 2008 or 7 or something like that. And then, like, this game is, like, even for that time, it was already not that cutting edge. And now it's not cutting edge for that time in 2009 or 2010, and it's definitely not cutting edge now. So it's not amazing looking. It doesn't look. It's good enough. It's good enough and it's serviceable. But of course, they use a lot of the illustrations of the portraits to kind of make up for the fact that there's not much character. The character animations are pretty like simple. There's not that much to it. I mean, it feels like a low budget graphics game. And it is. That's what these generally were back then. And they look pretty like, at least they're pretty serviceable. They don't look that bad. They don't look that great either, but it's good enough. And like, I haven't had too much trouble like, figuring out what is not interactable, what it is. Like, I know some games when they over realistic, sometimes it can be difficult to tell. But in this particular game's case, it wasn't too bad at all, because like the monsters are very distinct from the background. In fact, and the backgrounds are pretty simple. There's not the dungeons don't look. There's not any dungeons where I'm like, wow, this looks so great. Like, they're all like pretty straightforward, and like there's maybe one or two times it's like, this terrain, I can't tell if I can run over it or not. But like, the dungeons are so small that it kind of doesn't matter as much. So that's why I feel like the game isn't set up that you can get really, really lost. I never got lost. I don't think I can think of a time when I got really lost in the game by the dungeons. And that's kind of getting into gameplay. And so a lot of it is just like admiring the portraits while they talk rather than actually seeing the characters move around. And so for some people that's a stylistic choice, and I know there's a lot of things in Japan look like feel that way. And for some people, they might think that it's kind of like cheap, or like, why can't I see the characters move? It feels so like static. But I mean, that's just the way the games are presented, or at least for Rorona. I don't know about future games, and I know that the presentation will change eventually, but we won't discuss that too much. What else I want to say? I mean, the UI is fine. It looks good. And let's see. I didn't have a problem with it. The tutorials are like, some of the tutorial images are a little bit like, wow, they're really busy. There's like text on things, and then they come up with a text box that's a little weird. What else do I want to say here? And the combat is like, yeah, the models are definitely pretty dated as well. Like they're like they call it low polygon, where it's like not particularly detailed, but it conveys the thing. And the monsters are very simple, but that's fine. That's, yeah, you want a puni is a puni, and they're not very detailed, maybe except for the dragons. So it's alright. It works for the game, and it works for the cell shading that they were trying to go for. It's not a great looker, but I mean, this is a game that was made in 2009, so that was already not cutting edge for 2009, so that's kind of why we ended up with this. So it's fine. Let's see. For sound, I mean, we're listening to music right now. The music in this game is actually I actually really kind of like the music in this game. I mean, maybe it's not to everyone's taste, and it's like, oh, it's not epic enough, but there's a lot of flute work, and I really do like the fact that, like, the sound effects are fine. Like, they're nothing to write home about, but the music is actually quite nice. Like, they even have different themes per character, and I don't know if I remember all of it, but I mean, I don't know if I remember all the the music, but I did enjoy the music. It's pleasant enough, and the only thing is like some of the battle music is a little bit joyful, but definitely not when you're fighting like the super bosses. I was like, oh shoot, this is a super boss. The music is definitely not as cheerful as like the mini boss music or some of the boss music. I was like, oh shoot. So I really don't have too much to say about it. There's not that many tracks, and like but some of the tracks are nice. Especially Naval Lake is very nice. Catacombs is really ambient. Oh. Anyway, so let's see what else I have to say. I had something to say about the music. I think that's pretty much. I think that's pretty much it. And like, there's some of the moments are really funny, and like it works, and like it's actually a really nice soundtrack. I don't know if it's like epic, but it works with the atmosphere of the game itself. And so I think I have like the soundtrack because it came with like the PS3 version a while ago. So I guess I could listen to it again, man. It's been so long. So I know this game was like the Plus version was already released on the PS3. Let's see. I guess that means we're going to go to gameplay really quickly. I mean, there's not much else to say. For gameplay, I have a lot more to say, because like this game is very much a gameplay heavy game. So, 那个制作胖又说胖。我就是这个叫罗罗娜的工作室，这个工作室系列的，所以呢，这个是好久以前的，08年、09年啊。对，请不要用这个胖这个字，这么难听，好吧？就这样子了。其实所以这个游戏叫罗罗娜的工作室。 So anyway, I'm sorry, I was responding to the Chinese comment there. Let's see. What else I'm gonna say? Alright, so we're gonna go to gameplay. For gameplay, this game is very much like, there's a little bit of story, but primarily you're going to be optimizing and doing a lot of alchemy. I mean, that's basically the core of the game. So the core of the game is that you need to get you go into combat to get items, and once you get items, then you can refine things, and sometimes you can refine things. 好早，是的，也是很久以前的。可是这个版本它本来是10年，然后他们把它做了一个 Switch 的版本，还有一个 PS4 的版本。So I was saying that, yeah, this game was not already. I think this version, the Plus version, was 2010. It's been a long time. I kind of forgot. But anyway, so the gameplay is basically you need to get. Yeah, that's the core loop. So you have a limited amount of time. So you have certain goals you have to meet by a certain time, and you have to. When you go out in the combat, you take time away, and when you refine things by alchemy, you take time. So you're basically doing a bunch of time management, item management, and combat management. So obviously, thankfully, you can save as much as you want. I don't know how many slots there are, and I'm assuming there's a ton. So, because I didn't even use up nearly close to it, because I wasn't doing that badly. So a lot of it is, for some people, that might be difficult. Well, anyway, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing. I think you just have to come in with that expectation. Because some people are like coming in like, this is going to be an RPG, we're going to go adventuring. Well, kind of no, you're not. You're in one place, but you can explore more dungeons as you go on in the game. And that's how it feels like the game is expanding. And you'll often be doing what I was doing, where I was like mostly optimizing and figuring out like, okay, I need to do this. I have a certain amount of time, you're almost doing more alchemy than you are battling. And it almost feels like it's 60-40, because like I was doing more stuff on the item management and managing quests and trying to get my popularity further and further up. I mean, if I had known, I probably would have pushed it more, because I didn't realize the endings were actually based on popularity. Oops. Well, that's what you get when you do a blind playthrough. You're not supposed to. You wouldn't know that until you finished. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing. I think for some people it might be too. I think if you're expecting combat, then if you want to just do a lot of fighting and adventuring, I don't know if this is the right game for you. Because, like, it is not like that, and, like, even exploring the world, like, the dungeons are pretty small, and, like, they're split into multiple parts, which is kind of good, actually. So you can save in between parts, which is actually very, very nice. Thank you for that, game. And, sorry, had to drink a little bit of water. And so, if you I guess, like, the only thing I can think of that was kind of annoying was, like, well, you may have noticed that some bosses just pop out of nowhere and they don't warn you. Yeah, that would have been nice to do. I mean, then again, like, the dungeon's so small that I guess the only bad thing is, like, if you run into a super boss and you hadn't saved, then you were basically boned. I mean, that sounds like every other RPG, but that will actually send you back, because the penalty for losing is actually a lot. I think it's like, it was like 10 days or something. Like, it's the time you have to travel back and the time you're injured. I forgot. It's something like, it's a huge penalty, and at that point you might as well just reload, which would kind of suck. If you had explored the dungeon and not saved, then that would cost you a lot. And that can get kind of annoying. Could get annoying, but I mean, that's what happens when you have a save system that's very, like, where you can save frequently. So at least that's one way to mitigate. So, like, even getting to a super boss isn't, like, the dungeon segments are pretty small, like, outside of, like, the let's see, not the Nightwoods, like the Dark Realm. I don't remember what it's called anymore. So, like, yeah, that's the gameplay loop. I think it can get the time loop could get a lot more. Like early on in the game, it was like dead easy. I was actually like, oh man, I can crush everything with flying colors. Like, and we actually still did in the end. But like near the end, it was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of things that could eat up your time, and so that could get a lot of pressure. And I think if you were not good at optimizing, this game would be a lot harder, because then you would have to actually like, okay, I need to pass this. I didn't do it. I went willy-nilly. So you kind of want to the game kind of encourages you to plan. And I think if you like that kind of stuff, then you'll like it a lot. But for some people, that's too much, and they just want to like explore at their own pace, and that this is not quite the game for you to do that. I mean, I guess you could. I guess if you finish everything really early, then you can do whatever you want. I mean, that was early on in the game. We were not having problems, and then near the end, things started becoming more difficult because the items took longer to refine. There were more of them, and dungeons became a lot harder. Especially like you are capped at level 50, so that's actually one of the hard parts, is dealing with super bosses, because you will have to have ways to increase your defense that don't rely on your combat level. In fact, that's actually very important that you might not realize, is that this game is very, very much equipment based. So even if you're a low level, it's fine. If you have the right equipment, you can do everything, because combat level doesn't matter as much as it seems. It does matter a bit, but like even at level 50, my Rorona was still having trouble with certain things. It's because it relied heavily on like having the right equipment. And so that's how the game loop works. So you're basically trying to get the best equipment, trying to get the best item, trying to gather as many ingredients. You can even use Hom to make things and to gather things, and you can also, and there are ways, and eventually when they add, things start going nuts when you start actually adding items to shops, and that's really, really helpful, especially like for some items that are very difficult to make. So they actually introduce you gradually, and that's kind of nice. It's good that they introduce features as you go, and you're like, oh, finally I have that feature. Like, oh, finally I can have a thing that reduces the amount of time it takes for me to travel to combat. So there's a lot of upgrades you can do. So, yeah, I mean, there's not much else to say. The controls are fine from what I can tell. Like, it does suck sometimes, like, you cannot swing the camera around, because the camera is a fixed camera. And that, I feel like, kind of was difficult in some dungeons. It's not bad enough that, like, wow, I hate it, but so much that it ruined the game. But it is something to note. That's like, if you're expecting, if sometimes you're like, I want to see what's over here, you can't. You won't be able to see it because you can't turn the camera. You'll just have to walk over there and hope you don't die. And, what else is there to say about it? I mean, the battle system is very simple. It's very interesting that Rorona is the only one that can use items, so that's also kind of important. I almost wonder, like, sometimes that felt very limiting, because it's very, very difficult to heal in battle. So you had to wait for Rorona's turn to cure people if you didn't already have someone that could cure. So basically, if you didn't have Ixel or Leonella, you were basically relying on Rorona to heal and maybe your equipment to auto-heal you. So that's kind of rough. So that's actually where some of the complexity of battle is. This is like, oh, you're so limited. I mean, in other RPGs, you take for granted that you can heal anybody at any time because everyone can use items, but only the alchemist can use an item in Rorona, so you have to actually think around it, and that's why you almost want to prioritize her equipment first, and then everybody else's, because you can swap them in and out. Charging for party members is kind of interesting. I almost, like, it started becoming kind of meaningless. I think it's only meaningful once you get Astrid and you want to use her, which we never did. We probably could have, actually. I didn't realize how little time we had, because, like, the dungeons just go so fast. What else I'm gonna say again? And then money eventually starts, once you get to a certain point, money stops becoming a problem, but it could be a problem in the middle, but later on it's not too bad. What else am I gonna say again? And yeah, sometimes like the battle, at least the battles are kind of interactive, so you only have a limited time to do follow-ups, and that's kind of nice. But once Rorona had no MP, you can't really do combinations, and then things can start unraveling, and that's not very good. So yeah, basically the alchemist is Rorona is very, very important. You need to make sure she's alive, so she should be the first one to, and that's why there's a lot of things to protect her, which is good. Thank you. Thankfully, the game decided to help us out with that. And I think the only annoyance I had with like party management is that it's difficult to swap party members in and out because you have to go to the actual place and talk to them and move them out. I wish they had a system where you could easily move them around in the menu, which would be a lot easier. So more like other RPGs where you can just swap party members in and out. I mean, look, Chrono Trigger, a game from 1995, was able to have easier party management than a game from 2008, and it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, I was like, I know they're trying to make it so that you have to talk to them, and like, yeah, but like, they could have just made it a lot easier. You didn't have to run around town just to find them. And like, if you forgot, like, I guess if you had not played the game for a while and then you forgot it, you're like, you waste a bit of time looking for them. Thankfully, fast travel is a thing, so it's not as bad of a problem as it could have been. But it's just kind of like, it was just kind of annoying. I'm like, oh, I have to first get them out. I can't swap their equipment out unless they're in my party, and it was kind of a hassle to do so. So it was like, oh my goodness. Yeah, party management, it kind of got to be a chore. And sometimes like item management got to be a bit of a chore too, because like you can't sell many, like, because you have to pick items by quality, you can't sell multiple items very, very easily. So you have to do what I did and like just scroll, hit, click, 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 click. And I wish there was a way to like, I just pick everything from here to here and I don't care. But I mean, I know that it might not have been possible because of the way how items work, because even individual ingredients have different properties, so you can't just sell them all at once. It's a tough problem, and I think if it would have just been nice to be able to bulk select things better, because I'm struggling to think of a way to do it. But yeah, that was kind of really annoying, and it was super annoying to get that to do it, and it was like kind of frustrating at times. So I think just like dealing with managing lots of items gets really tough. And sometimes it's not clear. And sometimes it's not clear what items exactly do. Like, I thought the Marinizer would allow me, because of the decoration, would allow me to breathe in the water, but apparently it doesn't. So why did I make it? I don't know. Or maybe you have to carry it in your hand so then you don't, and it's not consumable, but I have no idea. It's very weird. Sometimes, like, it's kind of confusing what items do. It might have been nice if it was a bit more clear, because they also try to stack so much information at once. What was I gonna say again? Yeah, the specific item ones, the ones you have to find something with a specific trait, can get kind of tough, because you don't always have the things with the traits you need, and it feels kind of random, so you don't really have a choice, and like, I need items of this trait quality, and you have to do it. So there's some luck involved, and it's kind of like, oh man, I wish you had more control over that stuff, but I'm not actually kind of not sure what you could really do, unless you could have Hom make some. It'd be nice if you could tell, like, say, like, I need you to make something with a specific trait, and that would be really useful. I think you can only say, like, make a thing with as many traits as possible, but that's still luck-based. I know I'm getting into the nitty-gritty of, like, item management. It's a lot of stuff to take in, and sometimes it was like, oh my goodness. I'm just like, there's so many variables. It gets a little overwhelming at times, because you're trying to figure out what you want to do, so you can it can actually cause you to have this, like, moment of, like, crippling indecision. It's just, I feel like this game sometimes felt that way for me, as you might have noticed when I was playing. I'm like, I don't know what's the best thing to do, and the time is pressure. There's time pressure, so I'm like, I don't know what to do. and so there's a lot of experimentation. I think I actually still enjoy that kind of stuff, but I think sometimes it's almost got a little bit much for me. But I still enjoyed it overall. So let me think. Is there anything else to say about it? I mean, other than I think I pretty much covered most of it. I mean, the time pressure's a bit much. It's not too bad, honestly. It wasn't that bad when I think about it in retrospect. But yeah, it can get to you, and I'm sure for some people it might be kind of hard. Like if they're not well equipped to do it. I guess if you're a younger player, then you don't know how to optimize, and you haven't played a lot of RPGs, then you might be a lot tougher. Anyway, let's see. I guess that's pretty much it for those 4 points. So, would I recommend this game for people to play? Now we're actually at the point where, to be honest, I mean, I guess it really depends on who you are. So, if you're just a casual player, I'd say, like, you know what's funny? I still say you could go ahead and give it a try. I mean, it's not, I almost say it's not an pure RPG. It's very much an item management game. And, like, it's not too difficult, personally, for me. And, like, I guess if it would allow you to get through, like, there's enough in the game that they can get you, that you'd be able to get through it for sure, and probably get the ending I got, or unless you didn't. You could also get the bad ending too. But anyway, like, for non-RPG gamers, I mean, I guess it's like a cautionary thumbs up rent, because, like, it's a pretty niche, like, style of play. It's not as simple as some other games you could start if you wanted to, like, I need an RPG. But if you're open-minded, you might enjoy it. And, like, if you can get over the presentation, because I guess some people are like, oh, it's too girly for me, and I feel like that can be a bit of a difficulty with male players in particular. I'm sorry, I had to it's a bit of a generalization, but this game is definitely, like, for a very, like, you have to come into the game with with the ability to handle this kind of cutesy art. And I think for some people that can be a turn off, because it's too much like, I know there's, in the game industry, we call games that are like, that would look like they're geared toward female audiences as pink. And to use that term, like, it looks like a very pink game. And for some people, that's probably going to be too much. So I guess it depends on how open you are to the idea, whether you can handle this art style. Handle the art style, handle, like, the story presentation, and the wholesomeness of it. So maybe it's a thumbs up red. For me, like, it's a thumbs up red for them. Like, just give it a try, and maybe you'll enjoy it. If you're an RPG gamer, I guess your expectations are that you're going to be doing something grandiose. It probably isn't for you. But if you do like combat mechanics and you have something a bit different than your standard RPG, then definitely give it a try. Give the series a try in general, because, I mean, like, this game, Rorona, is more like how the rest of the games are. There are other games in the series that are not like this, but we won't cover them here, because there's other places if you want to find that information about, especially about, like, I'll just give them out, like, Manakemia. Manakemia, like, is different from this game. So, it's different from these series of games too. It looks more like a standard Japanese RPG. But I won't say, I haven't played them, so maybe someday we can show Atelier Iris and Manakemia, which are more of the style of game we've more used to on these streams, to be honest. But it's nice but Rorona is more like the old games, so it's very much like half a combat and half an item management simulator. with story in the middle of it. So for some RPG players, like maybe you'll be like it. Maybe like if you're already used to like complicated combat mechanics, then this should be fun. You should be able to handle this. It's not any more complicated. Then you just have to get used to the item management sim part. And if you're an item management sim fan, I think you'll like it a lot. And then you have combat mechanics that aren't too difficult to wrap your head around, and you can still do like run the story, and it's very satisfying as you see yourself progress. And so you progress in different ways than other than just getting levels. You'll just get a lot more items, and those items help you in like very tangible ways, and that's very, very satisfying. So overall, yeah, I still think I would recommend the game. I mean, it's a thumbs up red for most people because it's kind of an acquired taste. And for RPGs, RP gamers, I guess, people who play RPGs, I guess it's also a thumbs up red too, because it's very much like, would you like it? Give it a try. I don't know if I would say like, oh, you gotta get it right now. I mean, because it's very much catered to a certain taste. But yeah, I definitely would recommend it. I definitely would play other games in the series, so we might be doing that too. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much the end of my review. I know I rambled on for a while, and like, oh my gosh, we are at the 5-hour mark. So